I should have known something was off the moment Jenna, my daughter-in-law, didn't even offer me a cup of tea. My son, Matthew, just stood behind her in the doorway of their fancy new house, all shiny glass and cold marble, with the strong smell of lemon cleaner hanging in the air. Honestly, it felt like even the house didn't want me there. That was my first night staying with them. It was also my last. By the next morning, I was being wheeled into what they called a recovery residence. The floor was cold beneath my feet, and someone strapped a beeping bracelet on my wrist like I was some farm animal. I hadn't even finished my first few sips of coffee when a young nurse, sweet, but clearly confused that I didn't have a suitcase, walked me to a small room. The walls were a faded yellow, and the only view out the window was of the dumpsters. There must be some mistake, I told her. I live with my son. She just gave me that look. You know the one, sad eyes, like she wanted to help but couldn't do a thing about it. The night before, Jenna barely said anything. Just one sentence, really, there's no place for you here. That was it. Not even in the guest room, one I'd helped pay for. Not even a corner in the house that only exists because I sold mine. I gave up my cozy little cottage with the blooming hydrangeas and the creaky porch, all because Matthew said they were in a tight spot. Mom, you'd be saving us, he told me. You'll always have a room with us. You'll never be alone. But alone is exactly what I am now. Even the teacup I wrapped carefully in a sweater, the one James gave me for our last Christmas together, got crushed in my bag. I could feel the broken pieces poking through the fabric. That cup had made it through 34 winters, 2 house moves, and even when Matthew dropped it as a toddler. But it didn't survive Jenna. Now I'm here. My room smells like bleach and old pudding. There's a button by the bed for help, and a laminated schedule for things like chair yoga and pudding socials. The woman next door screams in her sleep, and no one checks on her until morning. This isn't a place for healing. It's where people go when no one wants to bring them home. Matthew hasn't called. Jenna hasn't visited. I don't even have my phone charger. I don't have my robe. The cardigan my friend Gail knitted for me last spring? Left behind. But I do have my checkbook. And the terrible feeling that I gave them everything, every dollar, every memory, my home. Their house now? It's beautiful. Bigger than anything they've ever had. Jenna's mom used to call my place quaint, like it was a joke. She's probably in their new kitchen right now, unpacking wine glasses I unknowingly helped pay for. I haven't cried. Not really. But when the nurse rolled me into the dining room and I saw an older woman staring at her plate like she was scared to touch it, my throat got tight. Not because of the food. But because I knew that look. I've worn that look. I remember it. Clearly after James died. When you don't know who you are without the people you've built your life around, I whispered to the nurse. Then I asked, could you tell me today's date? She told me. I nodded, picked up a dry biscuit from my tray, and made myself a promise. Remember this day, Beverly. You are never letting anyone treat you like an afterthought again. You'll always have a room with us. That's what Matthew told me while sitting at my kitchen table. The same little table where he used to do his algebra homework while I stirred spaghetti sauce. He said it so sweetly, holding my hands like he was still my little boy, not a man who'd stopped looking me in the eye. I remember the smell of rain in the garden that day. The window was open. The scent of wet lilacs floated in and mixed with the cinnamon in my tea. It felt like such a hopeful moment. He looked at me and said, "You've given everything, Mom. It's time we take care of you." I cried, not from sadness, but from relief. For a second, I thought, maybe they see me. Maybe after all these years of doing without cutting corners so he could have piano lessons and summer camp, maybe someone was finally catching me. James had been gone for 23 years. I raised Matthew on a teacher's salary and a broken heart. No vacations. We grew green beans in the backyard and read library books under the ceiling fan when the heat was too much. And I was proud of all of it. I thought I'd raised a good man. He called it a bridge loan. Just a little help until his promotion came through. Said I was investing in my own future. I didn't know families needed investors now. He even brought over the papers himself. Sat right beside me on my old floral couch while Jenna stood by. It was strange how warm Jenna suddenly became that day. She offered me coffee, something she'd never done before. I remember she was wearing a pearl necklace, and I noticed it right away because it looked just like the one I gave her for their anniversary. She once said she lost it. But there it was, catching the light like tiny teeth around her neck. The paperwork she handed me looked serious, too official. I remember running my fingers over the notary seal, feeling how real and final it all was. "You trust me, don't you, Mom?" Matthew asked. What could I say? Of course I trusted him. So I signed. Then, that night, I made lasagna, humming to myself in the kitchen, feeling proud, like I was doing something good, something selfless. A final act of motherhood, I thought. One that would make all the sacrifices over the years finally feel worth it. God help me, I even packed up my little house on my own. Box by box, I wrapped James's old tools in newspaper. I kissed the walls goodbye and left the key under the flower pot, just like always. The "for sale" sign went up the next morning. That evening, I arrived at Matthew and Jenna's home, cardigan over one arm, suitcase in the other, thinking I had a fresh start. But Jenna met me at the door with a tight smile and said, "There's no place for you here." At first, I didn't get it. I thought maybe the guest room wasn't ready yet, or she needed time. But no. She meant it. There was no place for me at all. That promise Matthew made at my kitchen table, it wasn't worth the napkin it was written on. She threw it away like it meant nothing. Tomorrow, they'll ask me questions, like whether I feel safe at home. But what home? I don't have one anymore. Someday, though, Jenna's going to learn something. You see, the thing about stringing along a teacher is, we pay attention. We take notes. And sweetheart, I've been writing everything down. The days here don't really pass, they smear together. I used to think time moved like a train, steady, clear. Now it's like molasses spilled on the floor, slow, sticky, and impossible to clean up. They gave me a room way down the west hall. The radiator ticks like it's trying to talk, saying the same thing over and over. The meals never change, something mashed, something boiled, and pudding in a paper cup. Usually vanilla. But every now and then, they sneak in butterscotch, and it feels like a tiny rebellion. The staff? They're kind, but sometimes too kind. You know that soft tone people use with little kids or the very old? That's how they talk to me. "Good morning, Miss Beverly," they sing, like I'm a doll in a rocking chair. One young girl, Lena, always touches my arm when she talks. It's sweet, but it makes me feel invisible. No one's come to visit. Not once. Not a single call. Jenna dropped me off with a kiss that landed 6 inches from my cheek. Said something about support and not overwhelming the kids. Then she disappeared. Like I'd imagined the whole thing. I asked the nurse if she had my phone charger. She smiled with that same sad look and said, "It must have been left behind." I know what that really means. They don't plan on me needing it. But what hurt the most, the thing that actually broke something in me, was the cardigan. My soft gray one. The one Gail made for me last spring with the tiny pearl buttons. It smelled like lavender and home. It's gone. In its place is a zip-up fleece I wouldn't have picked out for a stray dog. I looked through the drawers. Nothing was mine. Just 2 thin nightgowns, a pair of old slippers, and a box of tissues. No blouse. No charger. No me. I sat down on that stiff little bed and stared at the wall. Did they throw my things away? Donate them? Or did someone else just take them? That's what it feels like now, like I'm being erased, bit by bit. Then, on the 3rd day, Gail showed up. Just like that. Hair still in curlers, one hand on her hip, the other holding a tin of lemon bars. "I had a feeling," she said from the doorway. "You don't just vanish, Beverly." She looked me over, frowning. "Where's your blouse?" "The floral one. With the bluebirds?" I didn't know how to answer. That's when her eyes narrowed, that same look she gave her kids when they came home late smelling like cigarettes. She stayed all afternoon. Watched how the nurses talked to me. Peeked in the closet. Found the name Edith M. written in faded marker on the slippers. "Darling," she whispered, taking my hand. "These aren't even your things." The lemon bar sat untouched between us. I couldn't even swallow past the lump in my throat. "I'll look into it," she said. "Don't you worry. They don't know who they're dealing with." She kissed my forehead, just like I used to kiss Matthew's when he was little and still thought I could fix everything. 3 days later, she came back, with her hair done and fury in her eyes. She didn't sit. Didn't touch the tea the nurse brought. She just stood there in the hallway, still zipped up in her red windbreaker like she hadn't meant to stay long. She held a folder tight to her chest like it might catch fire. Her voice trembled as she said, "Bev, you didn't just sell your house. You paid for their dream life." I stared at her, the ache in my joints forgotten. "What do you mean?" She opened the folder and held it out. "Your son, he bought another house. 2 days after yours sold. And guess who's living in it?" I couldn't speak. I didn't have to. She answered for me. "Jenna's parents. Her mother, Bev, the one who once said your sofa smelled like old people? Yeah. She's got her dream sunroom now. There's a lemon tree on the porch." I closed my eyes, and I could almost smell it. That lemon tree. Because I knew it was real. Not a joke. Jenna's mother always wanted one. Talked about it constantly at family brunches. Like she was some delicate queen who needed fresh citrus to survive. Well, she got it. Her dream came true. "She got her porch," I whispered, my voice barely there. Gail wasn't done. She pulled out her phone, scrolled a bit, then held it up for me to see. "That's not all." It was a photo. A listing. And there it was, my house. My blue shutters, the same ones James hung one cold October day, balancing on a ladder while I held it steady. My house, I whispered again. It was on Facebook Marketplace. Fully renovated luxury home, the caption said. Perfect for young families or out-of-town investors. But I could see it all, my kitchen tiles, the same ones I picked out. Behind the stove was the rooster mosaic I made in ceramics class, still there, still bright. And somehow, even more painful now. A piece of my grief, my healing, turned into decor. They're selling your memories, Bev, Gail said softly. Not just your house. Then she showed me one more thing, an estate sale listing. Vintage. Furniture and decor. Everything must go. My hands shook. I pressed one to my chest because it felt like something was ripping inside. Like a thread was coming undone and I couldn't grab it fast enough. They posted everything under Jenna's maiden name, so I wouldn't see it. They planned this. Hid it from me. Layered lie after lie so neatly you could spread them on toast. Then, Gail reached into her purse and pulled out a small velvet pouch. I took this from the listing photos, she said quietly, and placed it in my hand. It was my locket. The one James gave me for our 20th anniversary. A gold oval with baby Matthew's photo on one side, and a clipping of James's handwriting on the other. Love you, B. Always. I hadn't seen it in weeks. I thought I'd packed it. I know I did. But they had it labeled as vintage charm. I ran my thumb over it, cold, familiar, mine. They took everything, I whispered. Not everything, Gail said, steady now. You still have your mind. You still have friends. And I know someone who can help. That night, I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I just sat in bed, turning that locket over in my hand like it was a prayer bead. They thought they could silence me. Hide me away. Sell off my life piece by piece and move on. But they forgot who I am. I was a teacher for 40 years. I know how to keep records. I've got conference notes, attendance sheets, receipts for every box of cereal I bought when Matthew was in college. I know how to build a case. And now? Now I have a reason. I asked the front desk for 20 minutes, just a little time on the facility computer. A small favor, I said. I just want to check my email. The receptionist, a sweet girl barely older than my granddaughters, gave me a look like I'd asked to fly a rocket. I smiled, slipped on my reading glasses, and said, "Don't worry. I taught kids how to use Word when your mom was in high school." She laughed, handed me the mouse, and walked away. I typed in my old address, just to see. There it was. My house. My home. Maple Street Gem, they called it. Newly renovated luxury unit. They painted over the porch, no more robin's egg blue. They took down James's wind chimes. Dug up my flower beds and laid gravel like it was a grave. But the worst part? The rooster tile was still there. The one I made the year after James died. I cried into the clay while I made it. That tile helped me feel whole again. And now? Now it's just decoration. The listing bragged about all the vintage charm. The carved banister James restored. The window seat where Matthew built his first model plane. Not a single mention of me. Not one word about love. Just square footage. As I kept scrolling through the listing, I noticed the furniture had changed, sleek, modern, and kind of cold. But then I saw something that made my heart stop. Right above the fireplace, there it was, my old grandfather clock. Still ticking away. Still counting time in a house where I didn't matter anymore. Then I noticed a comment under the listing, saw this on a real estate tour last week, gorgeous remodel. So smart to keep the vintage elements. It's got such soul. Soul? That house had soul because I gave it one. I filled it with laughter, stories, the smell of sugar cookies, and cold mornings with warm coffee. Now it was just someone else's investment. I closed the page quickly before I did something reckless, like throw the mouse across the room. On my way back to my room, I passed another woman in the hallway. She was crying quietly, asking for her daughter. A nurse nodded kindly and guided her back to the lounge. "No one's coming today," she said softly. I knew that tone. I'd heard it before, used on me. Back in my room, I opened the small drawer next to my bed and took out my notebook. The one I started after Gail visited. Right at the top, I had written the date in big, careful letters, the day the curtains closed. Underneath, I'd made a list, house signed over on April 3rd. New property bought by J. Harris on April 5th, estate sale posted on April 8th, dates, names. Screenshots, Gail had printed them all and mailed them to me. Proof. Proof that they treated me like I was just an old woman with faded memories and furniture to match. But they were wrong. I remember everything. They thought I'd be too old. Too tired, too thankful, just to have someone feed me and help me bathe. But they forgot one important thing, I'm still me. Gail said she's bringing someone tomorrow. An advocate, she called him. Legal, quiet, and good with messy families. His name is Robert. I don't know him, but I know what I want now. Not apologies. Not excuses. I want the truth. I want control over what's left of my life. And if they thought I was invisible before, they're about to see what a woman with nothing left to lose can really do. He didn't knock like most people. Just 3 firm taps, then silence. He waited. Robert was tall and neat, dressed like someone who lives in courtrooms and drinks too much cold coffee. But when he looked at me, I saw something in his eyes, kindness, the quiet kind that doesn't need fancy words. "Miss Beverly," he said, setting down his leather briefcase like it was an old friend, "I've read everything Gail sent me. You've been wronged." Those words hit me harder than I expected. You've been wronged. It was like someone finally turned on the light. After I'd been sitting in the dark for too long. He pulled out a paper and slid it across the tray in my lap. "This is what you signed in the hospital last year," he said. "Hospital?" I asked. He nodded. "You were recovering from pneumonia. Remember? For oxygen, your son Matthew. Holding your hand?" I nodded slowly. I remembered him saying, "Don't worry, Mom. I'm taking care of everything." Robert tapped the page. "You gave him financial power of attorney that week. It's hidden under all the medical forms and consent documents." My stomach dropped. I thought I was just updating my insurance. I never read every word. "Most people don't," he said gently. "They counted on that." Outside, the wind started to pick up, and a bare tree branch scratched against the window. It made a dry, whispery sound that made the room feel colder. Somehow, Robert kept his voice calm. Legally, he could sell the house, move the money, even spend it, as long as he said it was in your best interest. I wanted to shout, "My best interest?" It wasn't being shoved aside and forgotten like leftovers. It wasn't some lemon tree in Jenna's mother's sunny porch. It wasn't illegal, Robert said, but that doesn't make it right. And it doesn't mean you're powerless. I sat back. My eyes stung, but I wouldn't cry. Not in front of this man. Not now. "So what can I do?" I asked. Robert gave me a small, steady smile. "Well," he said, reaching into his folder again, "we start by reviewing the paperwork, tracking the money, and building a clear timeline. But most of all, we make a record. Your story. Your side. Every decision. Every piece of it." I was still on breathing treatments when they brought me those papers, I said quietly. I was half asleep most of the time. Jenna told me it was just clean-up paperwork. Robert nodded. "I've heard that line before," he said. That night, I couldn't sleep. So I wrote, 2 whole hours, front to back. Not just about the sale of the house, but everything. The casseroles I made. The Christmas mornings I hosted. The day I picked up the twins early from school when Matthew got stuck at work. The loan I gave him in 2011 that he never mentioned again. The antique sideboard Genevieve borrowed and never gave back. There was a pattern, I realized. Because, sweetheart, not all abuse looks like bruises. Sometimes it looks like your birthday being forgotten 5 years in a row. Sometimes it looks like your locket accidentally getting donated. Sometimes it hides behind fake concern and a kiss on the cheek before they drive off, leaving you behind. Yes, they took my house. But worse? They took my place in the family. And now, I'm taking it back. It's a strange feeling, realizing your own signature betrayed you. I stared at the paper Robert left behind. There was my name, shaky in blue ink, right at the bottom. I remembered the pen. It skipped across the paper when I signed. I remembered the nurse telling me, "This just confirms you're being taken care of." Nobody said that being taken care of really meant being taken for everything. I read that one line again and again, authority to manage, sell, or transfer real and personal property, including real estate, on behalf of the principal. The principal, that was me. Matthew had already signed every section. His initials were tight and sharp, like he was in a hurry, or just sure I wouldn't question it. I don't think I even breathed for a full minute. Later that day, I ran my hand over the stitching on the sweater I was wearing. Not the soft gray one Gail made me, no, that one never showed up. This was a scratchy acrylic thing the facility gave me. The tag still itched at the back of my neck. That's when I remembered something else. The notary office. Matthew took me there 2 weeks after I left the hospital. He said it was just to finalize the family trust. I even asked, "Why isn't Jenna coming?" "She's at a work conference," he said. "Just us today, Mom. Like old times." I thought it was sweet back then. Now I know better. That's when he sealed the deal, not just power of attorney, but full control. The trust. My house. My savings. All turned into something that could be sold, borrowed against, used, like I was just a leftover, not a person who built a life there. Robert came again that Friday. He laid a thick binder on the table, gentle like it was breakable. Everything's in here, he said. The house sale. The transfers. And here's the part that really matters, the deed for the new house. I opened it. There it was in black and white, owners, Frank and Lillian Harris. Date, 4 days after you're home. Sold. Jenna's parents. The same ones who never brought a dish to Thanksgiving. The ones who'd sniff and say, well, that's not how we do it, every time I made green bean casserole. Paid in full, Robert added softly, pointing to the payment record. A cashier's check. The money came directly from the escrow account used to sell my home. I covered my mouth, not out of shock anymore, but shame. They didn't just use my money. They used me. They used my name, my trust, my love. The house closed in my name. That trust account was tied to my pension. And with it, they lifted a whole house off its foundation and gave it to people who wouldn't have tossed me a glass of water if I caught fire in their driveway. That night, I couldn't sleep again. My old locket lay on the pillow beside me. Cool and quiet. I kept flipping it open. On one side, James. On the other, baby Matthew. I looked back and forth between them. One was gone. The other never really stayed. I remembered when Matthew was 7. We spent his whole spring break building a birdhouse together. He painted it bright blue. We hung it in the oak tree out back and checked it every morning to see if robins had moved in. And now? Now he didn't even leave me a perch. But here's the thing about shame, it doesn't get to keep me, not anymore. The moment I realized they'd cashed out my life to pay for lemon trees and walk-in closets, that was the moment the fog cleared. I didn't just lose a house. I woke up. And darling, once a woman like me wakes up, she doesn't go back to sleep. They were handing out pudding cups when the truth finally hit me again. Vanilla, like always. The nurse, Donnie, sweet girl, the one who hums gospel songs when she changes the sheets, smiled at me like she always does. But this time, I smiled back. Because now? I have a plan. The nurse was making small talk while she fluffed my pillow, nothing important. Just the weather, her new shoes, and how one of the residents moved out earlier that morning. Well, at least Mrs. Harris got out of here, she said with a little laugh. Her family put her in a beautiful home near Rosewood. Like something from one of those fancy home makeover shows. Big windows, lemon tree on the porch, real fancy. My spoon stopped halfway to my mouth. I didn't say anything, just smiled. And nodded like it didn't matter. But the second she walked out, I sat there completely still. Mrs. Harris. Lemon tree. Of course. Jenna's mother. Not only had they used my money to buy her a home, they moved her out of this place. Out of the beige hallways, the lukewarm pudding, and the same 2 silent nights I spent after they dropped me off like an old coat. No one wanted any more. And Jenna's mother? She got rescued like some kind of queen. That's when the heat crept up the back of my neck. It wasn't full-blown anger. It was smaller. Meaner. Humiliation. Because it wasn't just that they tricked me. It was that they ranked me. And I came in last. That night, I called Gail from the landline. She picked up on the first ring, like she'd been waiting. She's out, I said. Jenna's mom. She was here. I heard her chair creak before she spoke. Well, isn't that just the rotten cherry on top, she muttered. She's in my house? Or what's left of it? No, Gail said, voice flat. She's in a house, Beverly. And yeah, it was bought with your money. But it was never your home. They made sure of that. I stared at my locket on the nightstand. And I realized. It's not even about the house anymore. It's about how easy it was for them. I opened my notebook and wrote the words in big, bold letters. They moved her out, and they moved me in. Same week. Same hallway. Same white pudding cups. I pictured Jenna standing in that shiny marble kitchen, wine in hand, smiling like she'd done something noble. Calling herself a caregiver. Toasting herself for taking care of the family. And Matthew? Sitting in that leather office chair I helped him pick out, letting Jenna speak for both of them. I raised a man who couldn't even look me in the eye when he handed me over like dry cleaning. But that shame? That doesn't belong to me anymore. No, darling, that weight belongs to them. Robert is coming back Monday. He said he's bringing more paperwork. We're not just building a case, we're building a reckoning. Because I may be older now, and I may be alone. But I'm nobody's afterthought. When he came in, Robert placed a manila envelope on my tray like it was something sacred. It's all here, he said. Everything you suspected, and more. The papers were thick. Stapled. Marked with red tabs. My name wasn't on any of them, but my money was behind every single one. He opened to the middle. This is the deed for the new property, Cherry Hill Road, he said. Bought outright. No mortgage. Then he flipped to the next page. And this? The loan agreement. Wire transfer from escrow. Traced directly to the trust account you signed over. I swallowed hard. My mouth tasted like metal. Then he tapped one more page. And here's where it gets interesting. I leaned in. There were the co-signers, Franklin and Lillian Harris. Jenna's parents. They signed the purchase documents. Robert explained. They weren't just getting a gift, they were in on it. And they signed these 2 days before your house sale even closed. I blinked. Before? 2 days before, Robert said. That means the deal to buy them. That house? It was already done, before you signed the closing papers. I whispered, they knew. Robert leaned back in his chair. Oh, they more than knew. They planned it. They built their safety net using your life savings, and moved right in before the ink was even dry on your goodbye. It wasn't just betrayal. It was premeditated. They hugged me goodbye. Kissed my cheek. All while waiting on a wire transfer they stole from right under my feet. Jenna always liked to call herself a planner. Well, bless her heart, she planned me right out of my own life. But I didn't cry that day. Instead, I started writing again. Not just lists this time. Not just dates. Letters. To the twins, my grandbabies, telling them how I used to rock them to sleep, and slip dollars under their pillows when they lost their teeth. To the ladies at church, explaining why I hadn't been around. Because, now, the truth is coming. And it's got my name written all over it. I couldn't make it to the bake sale, and telling Matthew that was the hardest part. In his letter, I reminded him of all the moments I held close, every baseball game, every science fair, every night he stayed up with me when James died. He used to hug me and say, "It's okay, Mom. We're going to be fine." I told him I believed in him more than I believed in God some days. Maybe that was where I went wrong. That evening, I put on lipstick for the first time in months. Nothing fancy, just a soft rose shade, the one James always liked. Then I carefully folded each of my letters and tucked them into an old shoebox Gail had brought over. On the lid, I wrote one word, truth. Because when you lose everything, your home, your savings, even your name on the mailbox, truth is all you have left. And no, truth won't stop the storm. But it's the one thing that can keep your hands steady when the winds come crashing in. Gail never liked smartphones. Said she didn't trust anything that listened more than it talked. But when she walked into my room that Wednesday, holding her phone like it was something heavy, I knew something was different. She didn't smile or ask if I'd eaten. She just said, "You need to hear this," and tapped the screen. The video started with laughter. Jenna's voice, sharp and smug, cut through the sound of clinking glasses and party chatter. Then came the words that knocked the breath right out of me. Honestly, we finally got rid of the old bat. I felt like I'd been hit in the chest. Gail didn't stop the video. A man laughed, probably someone Matthew worked with. Then Jenna again, saying, "It took her a while to figure it out, but by then the house was already ours. Can you blame me?" More laughing. "She'll be fine. She's got pudding and puzzles, or whatever they do in those places." Then someone, maybe tipsy, asked, "Was it hard convincing her?" And Jenna, as calm as if she were talking about the weather, said, "Not really. We just let her think she was helping. Told her it was temporary. You know how sentimental old women get. She probably still thinks we care." Then it ended. Silence fell between us like a heavy curtain. I didn't cry. Not then. The hurt was too deep, too old, settled in me like dust at the bottom of a glass no one bothers to stir. All I could whisper was, "She said it out loud." Gail sat beside me, her shoulder touching mine. She didn't know I was behind her. She said quietly, "I was at Natalie's engagement party, you remember, my niece with the unfortunate eyebrows?" I let out a soft breath. Almost a laugh. "Jenna's voice carries," Gail said. "I was filming the toast for Natalie. Caught it all by accident." I stared at the wall. "Well," I said. "Well," she echoed gently, "now everyone else can hear what you've known all along." That night, Gail uploaded the video, no edits, to one of those local Facebook groups where news spreads faster than fire in July. She didn't even need to write a caption. By morning, it had over 800 views. By lunchtime, people were whispering Jenna's name in the grocery store, at church circles, under bold headlines like, "What happened to Mrs. Beverly?" Someone messaged me through Gail's account, a woman from church. She asked, "Is it true? Are you okay?" I answered, "I'm not okay, but I'm getting there." That video didn't fix what they broke. It didn't give me back my home, or the years I gave to a family that left me behind like trash on the curb. But it did give me something else. It gave them the silence. Now they had to sit in it. They couldn't lie or pretend anymore. Couldn't look kind in front of neighbors. Couldn't fake sadness in a church pew and say, "We did our best." Because now, their truth was out. And the whole town could hear it. The phone rang twice that night. First during dinner, Matthew blinked on the caller ID. I let it buzz and rattle across the counter. I didn't answer. The second call came just before midnight. Private number. I let it go to voicemail. I didn't expect him to call anymore. But hearing his name again still hurt. There was a time I would have picked up on the first ring. A time I'd run barefoot over hot pavement if he needed me. That boy used to whisper "mama" in his sleep. And now he couldn't even say, "I'm sorry." So, I made myself a cup of chamomile tea, just the way I like it. Every night, I made my tea the same way, 2 sugars, a splash of milk, stirred with the tiny silver spoon from my mother's wedding set. That small ritual hadn't changed. But something inside me had. Instead of flipping open my notebook to jot down dates or keep track of bills and angry thoughts, I turned to a blank page and wrote just 4 words, "I'm done with hope." Not because I was angry. But because, for the first time in a long time, I was finally clear. Robert came the next morning, just like he always did, sharp and steady in his gray coat, his hands red from the wind. He sat across from me with the familiar folder in his hands, the one I knew almost by heart. "I'm ready," I told him. "Let's do this." He nodded. "Then let's talk about the trust, what you still own." He walked me through it all. My pension. A small savings account I'd tucked away for emergencies. The investments I started after James died. The pieces they hadn't touched. "I want it all moved," I said. "Everything. Out of their reach." Robert raised an eyebrow. "Moved where?" "Into a trust. My name. My rules. No one else touches it. Not Matthew. Not Jenna. Not even the twins." He paused. "Not even the grandkids?" I hesitated. That one stung. "But some pains are necessary. I'll take care of them," I said quietly. "But not through him. Not through guilt. And definitely not through that house." That afternoon, I signed everything. We canceled Matthew's power of attorney. We built a living trust, mine alone. Gail was my witness. Robert became the executor. I added one line to the will, right before I signed it: "No inheritance shall be given to anyone found guilty of coercion, fraud, or manipulation regarding this estate." For the first time in months, I could breathe again. Later, I sat out in the courtyard. The air smelled like rain and damp soil. I pulled out my old locket, James on one side, baby Matthew on the other. I kissed it gently and tucked it into my cardigan. Then I whispered, "No more hoping, James. Not for them." And deep down, I believe he understood. Because hope, when it's used like a chain, when they only pull you close when they need something, that's not love. That's control. And I'm too old, too tired, and too wise to be anyone's leash anymore. The next day, my niece Clara called. She's always had a strong head like her mother and a soft heart like mine. "Auntie Bev," she said gently, "why didn't you tell us?" I didn't know what to say. I wanted to admit I was ashamed. That I spent so many years defending Matthew I forgot how to protect myself. That by the time I realized what they were doing, the damage already had my name on it. But instead, I just said, because I didn't want it to be true. Clara sighed. "Well, it is. And it's disgusting. We have a guest room." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it felt so good to hear someone just offer. Not hint. Not guilt trip. Just offer. "I'm not asking you to move tomorrow," she said. "But I am asking you to remember, you've got more family than the ones who used you." That night, I couldn't stop thinking about her words. About living somewhere that didn't smell like bleach and sadness. Somewhere with a window I could actually open, a rug that didn't scratch my feet, a TV that wasn't bolted to the wall. A place where I wasn't surrounded by people crying out for daughters who never came. A place where I wasn't left behind, on purpose. By morning, my mind was made up. Robert came by with the final papers. Everything was locked in. Irrevocable. Safe. "I want to send the letter," I told him. "To Matthew?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Let him know it's done. There's nothing left to fight over." Robert gave a small nod. "You don't owe him anything." "I'm not sending an explanation," I said. "I'm sending closure." Clara showed up 2 days later with a thermos of mint tea and a scarf she'd knitted herself. We packed up my things together, not that there was much. My notebook. My locket. The cardigan. A few clothes Gail had bought after Jenna forgot to pack mine. It all fit into one small suitcase. Isn't that something? A whole life, packed into a carry-on. But you know what? It felt light. Clara's house wasn't big or fancy. It was warm. A little noisy, her twin boys running around and their dog claiming the couch like it paid rent. But it was real. There was a crocheted blanket on the bed, a window that looked out over blooming peonies, and a bookshelf full of used paperbacks and framed pictures. And there, already tucked between the spines and smiles, was something I hadn't felt in a long time: my name. There was a little label outside the guest room door. It didn't say visitor. It didn't say burden. It said Auntie B's room. Mine. That night, I opened the window and let the spring air drift in. It smelled like tulips, fresh, rain, and maybe, possibility. I took off my locket, James on one side, baby Matthew on the other, and tucked it gently into the drawer beside the bed. Then I whispered, "We're safe now, James." Because we were. We didn't have riches. Or power. No big speeches or apologies were waiting at the door. But for the first time in a long time, we were safe. Tomorrow, Robert's letter would land in Matthew's mailbox. No fluff, no confusion, just the truth, typed in clean legal terms. He no longer had control. No access to my accounts. No power of attorney. No inheritance. No more "the house will be ours." No more "Mom will understand." No more nights pretending I was asleep while they quietly tore apart the life I built. From now on, I decide where my love goes. Where my name goes. Where my things go, and sugar, I've decided, they get nothing. Matthew always hated checking the mail. Even as a kid, he'd let birthday cards and dentist bills stack up until I finally said, "If you don't open your life, don't be surprised when it passes you by." Well, he opened this one. Hand delivered. Signature required. Thick ivory paper. A shiny seal in the corner. And Robert's voice, cold, clear, and unshakable, on every page. The letter spelled it all out. Power of attorney, gone. Will and trust, rewritten. Assets, protected. Inheritance, denied. And right at the bottom, all future contact must go through legal counsel. Not Mom. Not Beverly. Legal counsel. Gail told me how it went. Small towns have fast gossip, and one of her bridge friends lives 2 doors down from Matthew. Said he. Stormed onto the porch that afternoon, face red, pacing like a caged animal. Jenna followed, wine glass in one hand, phone in the other. "What do you mean everything's gone?" she snapped. "She froze the accounts," Matthew growled. "Everything's locked. There's nothing left to inherit." Jenna's voice cracked. "What about the house?" He didn't answer. Because he knew. That house, the one with the lemon tree Jenna's mother loved, the one I paid for without knowing it, it wasn't protected. Not from questions. Not from the law. And Robert made sure of that. Meanwhile, I was sitting in Clara's kitchen, sipping mint tea, helping her boys with a puzzle, one of those chunky ones with big cardboard pieces and farm animals. "Do pigs go in the barn or outside?" one of them asked. "Depends on the weather," I said, smiling. Simple questions. Honest lives. Not a scheme in sight. I didn't gloat. I didn't cheer. But that night, I did take the locket out and set it on the windowsill. The breeze smelled like grass and rain on the way. I looked out and said softly, "They know now. They know I'm not afraid. They know I saw them. And they know I'm not coming back." Jenna called twice that evening. Blocked number. No voicemail. I didn't answer. What was left to say? You can't apologize for something you're still trying to justify. I didn't say goodbye. Not to the nursing home staff. Not to the bridge group. Not even to the doctor who used to pat my shoulder and say, "You're holding up so well, dear," like surviving heartbreak was some kind of trophy. Some goodbyes don't need words. And mine? Mine was the quiet kind. The kind they don't notice until they finally look around and realize what's missing. Clara packed my things into real luggage this time. Not that ratty hospital duffel that held my life for the last 4 months. She folded my favorite blue cardigan, the one with the mother-of-pearl buttons, and laid it gently next to my notebook. Then she kissed my forehead. "I'm proud of you, Auntie B," she said. I couldn't find words. So I just squeezed her hand. Then I climbed into Gail's old Buick, a tartan blanket across my lap and a thermos of tea between my knees. The road was long, soft with curves, lined with tall old trees, the kind of drive that makes you think about forgiveness, just not enough to hand it out yet. We reached the house by dusk. It was in Maine, left to Gail by her cousin. Nobody expected it, but there it was, a porch with 2 rocking chairs, a screen door that creaked just right, and hydrangeas that danced in the sea breeze like they remembered me. Inside, the house smelled like lemon oil and wood smoke. There was a cozy bed with a patchwork quilt. A quiet kitchen with pans that didn't clang but sang when you set them down. A bookshelf full of stories waiting to be reread. And me, finally. Somewhere that felt like home. I never told Gail to take that photo, but she snapped it the next morning anyway. I was sitting in the white rocking chair, holding a cup of tea. My hair was pulled back, no makeup, no posing, just calm, just me. She posted it on Facebook without saying anything. No caption, no location, just the picture. People started leaving comments quietly. "She looks beautiful, is that Beverly? She looks free." No one tagged Matthew, but I know. He saw it. And I know exactly what went through his mind. She's really gone. The letter came on a Thursday. It was from the IRS, certified, urgent. Jenna pulled it out of the mailbox like it might bite her. Her nails were painted pale pink, and they trembled as she held it up to the light. She didn't open it right away. People like Jenna think if they ignore trouble long enough, it'll just go away. But sweetheart, the truth doesn't disappear. It doesn't blink. Matthew opened the letter in the kitchen, right on the same marble counter where I once set a tin of oatmeal cookies, and heard my name spoken like a bad word. Funny how things change. Now they were the ones going quiet. Because inside that envelope was a federal audit notice. They were digging into everything, my trust, all the bank transactions, the power of attorney they took from me, the house they bought under someone else's name. Every little detail, every dotted I and crossed T, now being looked at closely under a government magnifying glass. See, when you take a widow's money and buy yourself a fancy house, then call it caregiving, the IRS doesn't care how many bake sales you organized at church. They care about paperwork. They care about names on dotted lines. And about how fast those names got a little too comfortable. Gail heard about it through the lawyer. The office called Robert. Robert called me. He didn't rub it in. He just said, "The wheels are turning." I smiled, slow and full. Not because I wanted them to hurt, but because I wanted them to finally understand. That same afternoon, I was in Clara's backyard garden. She was showing me the right way to trim basil. The twins were inside arguing over board games. The sun was warm on my neck. That's when my phone started ringing, unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. And again. I didn't listen to them. I didn't have to. Later that evening, I poured myself a cup of Earl Grey and sat on the porch. The hydrangeas were just beginning to bloom, soft blue, like they'd been shy in the sun. Helen was next to me, knitting quietly. Her cane leaned against the chair. "You're awfully quiet," she said without looking up. I took a sip of my tea. "They're just now learning how heavy an empty house can feel," I said. She nodded. "Truth has a weight to it." "Yes," I said. "But so does freedom. And I'll take that kind of heavy any day." The last line I wrote in my notebook was this: "Being alone is better than being used." And I meant every word. Let them spin their stories. Let them act like it was all a big misunderstanding. Let them explain to the IRS how they sold Beverly Harris like a worn-out armchair and expected her to sit quietly by the window forever. Because here's the truth, sweetheart, I may have slipped out the back door, but I owned the whole damn house when I left.